screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we are talking about the magic of sound today. There was neither silence nor sound, naught, save ceaseless eternal breath or motion which knows itself not. The idea that things cease to exist and still be is a fundamental one in Eastern psychology. Draw a deep line in your thought between that ever incognizable essence and the invisible yet comprehensible presence, which is mula prakriti, or undifferentiated root substance, from beyond and through which vibrates the sound of the verbum, and from which evolve the numberless hierarchies of intelligent beings, whose essence is spiritual force, whose substance is the elements, and whose bodies, when needed, are the atoms. In an essay called Nirvana Moksha, two Sanskrit words meaning a state of absolute existence and absolute consciousness into which the ego of man enters after reaching the highest degree of perfection and holiness during life, Madame Blavatsky says, from the beginning of human aeons, from the very dawn of occult wisdom, the regions of space as the eternal root of all have been explored by seers of every age. For them, it was already the playground of all forces in nature, the fountainhead of all terrestrial life, as well as the abode of those, to us, invisible swarms of existences, of real beings, as of their shadows, conscious and unconscious, intelligent and senseless, surrounding us on all sides, a fountainhead interpenetrating the atoms of our cosmos, seeing us not as we do not see or sense them either through our physical organism. For the occultist, space was the one element, the root of life, which in its eternal ceaseless motion, like the out and in breathing of one boundless ocean, evolving and reabsorbing all that lives, feels, thinks, and has its being. It was a combination of 1,000 elements, and yet the expression of a single spirit, a chaos to the senses, a cosmos to the reason. But spirit is a non-entity, a pure abstraction, an absolute blank to our senses, even to the most spiritual. It becomes something only in union with matter, hence it is always something. Since matter is infinite and indestructible and non-existent without spirit, which in matter is life. Separated from matter, it becomes the absolute negation of life and being, whereas matter is inseparable from it, confirms the Mahatma Kutumi. And Madame Blavatsky adds, spirit emanates from the unknown darkness, the mystery into which none of us can penetrate. That spirit, call it the spirit of God or primordial substance, mirrors itself in the waters of space, or the still undifferentiated matter of this future universe, and produces thereby the first flutter of differentiation in the homogeneity of primordial matter. This is the voice, pioneer of the word, or the first manifestation. And from that voice emanates the word or logos, that is to say, the definite and objective expression of that which has hitherto remained in the depths of the concealed thought. That which mirrors itself in space is the third logos. We may express this trinity also by the terms color, sound, and number. Each element emerging from this cosmic activity is connected with one of our senses according to its own characteristic, starting with sound and hearing, which is ether, and air is touch, fire or light is sight, water is taste, and earth is smell, and all emanating from sound. The secret doctrine reminds us again and again, quoting from Hermes, that creative speech or verbum is the seminal principle scattered throughout the universe. The divine resonance is only the outbreathing of the first sound of Aum, the power which stirs up and animates the particles of the universe. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wings simultaneously the whole universe and the germ that dwells in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves over the slumbering waters of life. Sound is shown to be at the root of manifestation, or in other words, that the word or logos, the firstborn, is that by which all things are made. In physics, sound is a vibration that propagates as an audible mechanical wave of pressure through a medium, such as air or water, which is perceived by the brain. A legend says that Pythagoras was walking by a blacksmith shop, and he heard the sound of different hammers in action. He noticed that there was a variety of pitches emitted from the striking of the anvil at different angles. Hearing familiar harmonies, he went into the shop and found out that it was the different weight of the hammer that determined the sound. A hammer weighing half as much as another one produced a sound twice as high. This aroused his curiosity even more, and he started his investigation into sound and harmony by setting up an experiment using strings and weights. He observed that a string with 12 weights, for example, and another one with 6 weights produced an octave. He started experimenting with a monochord, a one-stringed instrument, and found out that by dividing the string at the halfway point, he produced an octave, or a ratio of 1 to 2. Dividing the string into various other lengths with frets, intervals of 3 to 4 and 5 to 6 were produced. Other tests showed that all simple musical instruments work in much the same way, whether they are struck, plucked, or blown. The amplitude or maximum extent of vibration and the size of the sound-producing instrument are factors regulated by number. The vibrational frequency of the stretched string is universally proportional to its length. Pythagoras' pioneering work became the groundwork for the modern science of acoustical physics, assigning mathematical data as a basis for harmonious sounds. Deeply impressed by the link between music and number, Pythagoras came to the metaphysical conclusion that all nature consists of harmony arising from number, that cosmos is music, and music is number, being behind everything in nature. Any tone played or sung activates a mixture of overtones, creating a unique quality of a musical sound distinct from its pitch. The same note can be played on a piano, for example, a guitar, a violin, or a trumpet, yet they all sound different and yet are in total harmony. By associating measurement of length with musical tones, Pythagoras made the first known reduction of a quality, which is sound, into a quantity, which is length. He also recognized that the musical octave is the simplest and most profound expression of the relationship between spirit and matter, because the miracle of the octave is that it divides wholeness into two audible, distinguishable parts, yet remains recognizable as the same musical note. a tangible manifestation of the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below. The profoundly influential Pythagorean Brotherhood tried to unite religion and science, mathematics and music, medicine and cosmology, body, mind, and spirit in an inspired and luminous synthesis. The Pythagoreans also used music to heal the body and to elevate the soul, that the human organism responds to the various relationships of sound. Yet they believed that earthly music was no more than a faint echo of the universal harmony of the spheres, the planetary spheres ascending from earth to heaven like the rung of a ladder. Each sphere was said to correspond to a different note of a grand musical scale. The particular tones emitted by the planets depend upon their ratios of their respective orbits, just as the tone of a lyre string depends upon its length. Pythagoras also turned the gamut of the diatonic scale, 7 tones, into the chromatic scale, 12 tones, which we use today by adding the 5 half tones as seen on the keyboard of the piano. Other philosophers of the ancient world, like Plato, Pliny, Ptolemy, amongst them also contemplated the music of the spheres. This doctrine was transmitted to medieval Europe, where it also inspired Copernicus and Robert Fludd, as well as Kepler. Plato once described astronomy and music as twin studies of sensory recognition. Astronomy for the eyes, music for the ears, and both requiring knowledge of numerical proportions. Madame Blavatsky said already, every atom in every object of nature sings its own keynote and produces its own sound, has its own color and number, a play and interplay of sounds, loud and faint, interblending in a marvelous symphony. How sound can produce physical phenomena is also shown in cymatics, which is a Greek term for waves. Here we see a vibrating plate at a specific frequency characteristic to that vibration and the pattern it produces. In his book, The Elegant Universe, Brian Greene, professor of physics and mathematics at Columbia University in New York, says that physicists use the term amplitude to describe the maximum height of depth of a wave. If electromagnetic waves sound a bit abstract, another good analogy are the waves produced by plucking a violin string. Violin strings can undergo an infinite number of different vibrational patterns, known as resonance, which are wave patterns whose peaks and troughs are evenly spaced and fit perfectly between the string's 2 endpoints. Our ears sense these different resonant vibrational patterns as different musical notes. The stuff of all matter and all forces is the same, he says. Each elementary particle is a single string, and all strings are absolutely identical. Differences arise because their respective strings undergo different resonant vibrational patterns, just different notes on a fundamental string. The violin string gives rise to different musical notes. The different patterns of a fundamental string gives rise to different masses and force charges. The ends of a violin string are pinned down, ensuring that they have a fixed length. But there is no constraining frame that pins down the size of a fundamental string. The huge string tension causes the loops to contract to a minuscule size. The greater the tension the string is under, the harder it is to get it to vibrate. The string with higher tension will have more energy than the one with lower tension, since more energy must be exerted to set it in motion. But no matter how placid a string might appear, it will always experience some amount of quantum vibration. Nothing in nature is ever perfectly at rest. If string theory is right, The microscopic fabric of our universe is a richly intertwined, multidimensional labyrinth, within which the strings of the universe endlessly twist and vibrate, rhythmically beaten out through the laws of the cosmos. Far from being accidental details, the properties of nature's building blocks are deeply entwined with the fabric of space and time. The universe, being composed of an enormous number of these vibrational strings, is akin to a cosmic symphony. And Michio Kakuo, professor of physics at City University in New York, confirms in his book Parallel Worlds that the heart of an electron, for example, is not a point particle, but an extremely tiny string. If we were to pluck this string, the vibration would change. The electron might turn into a neutrino or a quark. It could turn into any of the known subatomic particles we know, because they are but different nodes on a superstring and not fundamental. Only the string is. The universe can now be seen as a vast symphony of strings. This discovery could be of great advantage in computer science. For example, a photon is a particle of light, says Per Delsing, professor at Chalmers University of Technology at Gothenburg, Sweden, which is a radiation from an electromagnetic field. Photons are commonly used in quantum experiments, but their speed makes it difficult for scientists to manipulate. Because sound moves slower than light, a new door into the quantum world has opened by talking and listening to atoms. The long-term goal is to harness quantum physics so that we can benefit from its laws, for example, in extremely fast quantum computers. In our physical world, the underlying force field of sound is ether. Where there is not ether, there would be no sound, says the secret doctrine, as it is a vibrating sounding board in nature in all of its 7 differentiations. Ether is matter, since it is atomic. Ether is a material agent, whereas Akasha, the supersensuous essence pervading all space, is a distinctly spiritual one. But the ether of which science has a suspicion is the grossest manifestation of Akasha. Though on our plane, for us mortals, it is the 7th principle of the astral light. When it penetrates or informs something, it may be molecular because it takes on the form of the letter, and its atoms inform the particles or molecules of that something. We may perhaps call matter crystallized ether. So what has this sounding board of nature revealed to us so far? In the Mahatma letters, the Mahatma Kutumi says something very significant. Namely that science will hear sounds from certain planets before she sees them, and that this is a prophecy. Did it already happen? The BBC online science editor, Dr. David Whitehouse, writes that astronomers have detected sound waves in the outer atmosphere of a star 130 light years away from Earth. When they are synthesized, they come across as a lot of buzz notes. The detection technique used allows the scientists to probe the outer layers of stars, and by their methods, they have found more than 70 planets circling other stars in the past decade. Already 3 decades ago, astronomers realized that also the sun vibrates like a giant musical instrument with well-defined notes of frequencies. The energy that excites these sounds comes from the turbulent convective region just below the sun's visible surface. Convection means the transfer of heat through a fluid, liquid or gas caused by molecular motion. The observation of these solar waves, sound waves, is called helioseismology. Another source of information about sounds or phonons is Dr. Jason Palmer, who was science and technology reporter at the BBC for 5 years before he joined The Economist as a science and technology correspondent. In one of his articles, he writes about the work of the American Space Station AAAS, which stands for American Association for the Advancement of Science. Their Kepler Space Telescope measures the size and age of stars better than any other means, namely by listening to the sounds they make. We have mentioned helioseismology a little earlier when talking about the sun. In his article, Jason Palmer writes about a conference in Washington, where Bill Chaplin, professor of astrophysics at Birmingham University, leader of the NASA Kepler mission, explains the Kepler space station as an exquisite tool for what he calls astroseismology, which measures minuscule variations in a star's brightness that occur as sound waves bouncing within it. Some 500 faraway stars using this method have been measured so far, and that astroseismology is in essence listening to the music of the stars, although it is not the sound that Kepler measures, but the tiny dip of the amount of light that is seen when a planet passes in front of a distant star. This also works for astroseismology, because as sound waves resonate within a star, they slightly change both brightness and the color of light that is emitted. Scientists can deduce the acoustic oscillations that give rise to the ripples on the light that Kepler sees. Like a musical instrument, the lower the pitch, the bigger the star, which are sounds 1,000 times lower than what we are able to hear. There are also overtones, multiples of those frequencies, just like musical instruments. And these give an indication of the depths at which the sound waves originate, as well as the amount of hydrogen and helium they are passing through, which results in a 5-fold increase in precision of estimating the star's age. Using the resonance, we can literally build up a picture of what the inside of a star looks like. There's no other way of doing that, says Professor Chaplin, and that there's a huge database now to mine for the rest of his career. An additional tool for measuring the sound of the universe or the music of the spheres are the just recently discovered gravitational waves. For example, Virgo is a giant laser interferometer, which is an instrument in which the interference of 2 beams of light is employed to make precise measurements and designed to detect gravitational waves. Virgo has been designed and built by a collaboration between a French and an Italian science institute. It is now operated and improved in Cassina, a small town near Pisa on the site of the European Gravitational Observatory, by the international collaboration of scientists from France, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, and Hungary. Gravitational waves are ripples in space-time, in the fabric of space-time, and are expected to be emitted by spinning stars, black holes, massive stellar explosions, and even shortly after the birth of the universe. General relativity states that any accelerated motion of mass could be the source of gravitational waves. Advanced Virgo can detect gravitational waves with frequencies between 10 and 10,000 Hertz. These are the same frequencies as the sound waves that are audible by humans. Therefore, any signal measured by advanced Virgo can be sent to a loudspeaker, and we can hear the symphony of the universe. There's also the mystery of our auric energy field, which is subject to the same laws of vibration and sound, surrounding everything in manifestation. It is the essence from where everything begins its evolutionary journey, starting in Mula Prakriti, which is the periodical shadow of the immaterial substance present in eternity, thrown into the lap of Maya or illusion. This was symbolized by an egg or a sphere. And since fecundation of an egg takes place before it is being dropped, so it happens with a non-eternal periodical germ, which later becomes the mundane egg, containing in itself the potency of the universe. It was what Hindu philosophy calls Hiranyagarbha, or Brahma, formed by the causeless cause as a golden egg, resplendent as the sun, which is a subjective underlying force field with two poles. The positive one acts in the manifested world of matter. The negative one is lost in unknowable absoluteness. This is what is called in the secret doctrine, stanza 3 of the secret doctrine, Father, Mother, Spinneweb, the essence of an electromagnetic energy field. The two made in one, a universe woven out of his own substance, is a spirit and life, without quality or quantity or form yet, but rather the space occupied in that ocean of spirit by the result of effects impressed thereon. This radiant force field is the underlying essence which contains everything in its potentiality, every physical phenomena from subatomic particles to complete and complicated systems like planets or a human being, is an emanation of this underlying electromagnetic energy field. Its radiation around animate and inanimate object was called throughout recorded human history aura. This auric envelope has 7 layers, says HPB, just as cosmic space and our physical epidermis. It is a within on different planes of subjectivity, merging gradually into objectivity. When the season of reproduction arrives, the sub-astral extrudes a miniature of itself from the egg of the surrounding aura. This germ grows and feeds on the aura until it becomes fully developed, and it gradually separates from its parent, carrying with it its own sphere or aura. Every human being, every human passion, every thought and quality is indicated in the aura by corresponding colors and shades of colors. If these nerve vibrations are made intense enough and brought into vibratory relation with the astral element, the result is sound. This is very important to keep in mind. We will come it again a bit later on. It is the aura which, according to our mental and physical state of purity or impurity, either opens for us vistas into other worlds or shuts us out altogether from anything but the three-dimensional world of matter. This is how important the role of the auric egg is in the human constitution. It is a field of all different ranges of consciousness of the embodied man, and it is likewise the ethereal and astral and even spiritual substance or auric envelope out of which every one of the vehicles of the human entity is formed. The human aura is today called a bioelectromagnetic energy field and is very well investigated by Dr. Valerie Hunt, professor of physiological sciences at the University of Los Angeles, confirming everything Madame Blavatsky taught us already some 140 years ago. Professor Hunt died in 2014 at the age of 97. She was well acquainted with the secret doctrine, where she came across the sevenfold constitution of man for the first time. In the early 1970s, she was teaching a graduate seminar on the neuromuscular aspect of behavior, and she just casually mentioned that some common human experiences seem to defy rational understanding, lying beyond the scope of scientific inquiry. These comments had a very unexpected effect, like lighting the fuses of stored fireworks. A whole class enlivened, and students began sharing some of their own strange experiences. At the next class meeting, she acknowledged students' interest in strange happenings, made a few comments, and then she wanted to continue with the scheduled course. But the entire class insisted that this was the class where they should study consciousness, even ancient literature, that the true function of a university was to expand the frontiers of knowledge, better than to critique existing research, would be to design a new direction. Valerie Hunt could, of course, not change the curriculum, but she agreed to stay an extra half hour for those who wanted to talk about psychic phenomena and esoteric experiences. Confronted with lots of challenges, this became the starting point of a serious investigation into the mind, consciousness, and the human aura, or what is called today the bioelectromagnetic energy field that surrounds every human being as well as every object in nature. In one of the following semesters, she took a sabbatical leave to explore these energy field concepts in Southeast Asia, observing acupuncture clinics in Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, as well as watching native ritual healing sessions in Bali, Indonesia, and Thailand. Equipped with her own insights into the extended reality of the culture she had witnessed, she returned to her university motivated to critically explore and find out for herself if these claims of subtle energies were really valid. The first equipment being used in a laboratory to measure these energies was a telemetry instrument, especially built for them by a NASA engineer who had already developed a telemetry system for astronauts, used to send their vital physiological recordings of muscle and heart activities during the first manned space trip from the moon to Earth. It is a kind of radio broadcasting system capable of intercepting and projecting the body's electrical activities, picked up from the body's surface by sensors, leading to a miniature battery-operated radio transmitter and amplifier attached to the person's belt. The signals are broadcasted by FM radio frequencies, and these airborne signals are picked up in the laboratory on Earth by a radio receiver and recorded on tape or disc for future analysis. It was already well known that stimulated brain cells create electrical energy, which can be recorded with an electroencephalogram, signals from muscles with an electromyogram, for the heart with an electrocardiogram. But using the telemetry instrument for recordings from the body's surface with electrodes, not only all activities of the body were contained in their readings, but also the auric field of a person. It is smaller in amplitude, but bigger in frequency. These extremely high biological frequencies of electrical currents, which could later also be associated with mind phenomena and human consciousness, were first researched in Valerie Hunt's laboratory at the University College in Los Angeles. And these are the findings. When the brain, heart, and muscle frequencies are filtered out, the frequency information from 500 up to 20,000 cycles per second were continuous, the highest the telemetry instrument was able to measure. With the discovery of fractal mathematics, or the geometry of nature, computer scientists very soon developed new graphic programs. The latest aura monitor is able to record cycles up to 200,000 per second. The closest description of a bioenergy field or aura is a spatial structure in the fabric of space itself. This reminds us of what the Mahatma Kutumi says in the Mahatma Letters. Spirit and life are indivisible, and are the space occupied in that ocean of spirit by the result of effects impressed thereon. So how does this electromagnetic energy field around us come about? This is how Valerie Hunt describes it. We know that all objects, animate or inanimate, occupying space are composed of atoms, says Professor Hunt, inside of which the electrons spin around the nucleus, releasing the raw energy of positive and negative ions. Energy is an important factor in the function of our bodies. It is the fundamental entity of nature, consisting of negative and positive particles exhibiting attraction and repulsion, which manifests as movement called currents. The key player creating this electrical energy are ions. They are atoms which have either lost or gained an electron, making them either positive or negatively charged. The positively charged ions stay in the vicinity of other atoms, searching for another negative ion to become a new atom. The negatively charged ions, on the other hand, migrate to the surface of a physical body, where they hang around the positively charged surface. This is an energy field surrounding all physics. It is broader, faster, and more dynamic from living structures. And this field around a person has been called throughout history the human aura. It radiates light frequencies, which can sometimes be seen by others in higher states of consciousness. The biofield monitor showed that this energy field is unique to each individual, changing with emotions and consciousness. It selectively transacts with other outside fields of information, altering raw outside stimuli to meet its own needs. It is a primary information selecting and processing system, because all outside stimuli or information must selectively pass through this field before reaching the nervous system. It is a primary marker of living behavior and feeling states. Since the first action of the mind, Valerie Hunt named it mind field, because information through a biofield vibrations is an organism's primary source of nourishment. This energy field is a quantum concept of vibrations, and their frequency can be visualized by different colors. It has its own integrity. It reacts, interacts, and transacts with other quantum fields of information and is selective. From her intensive studies with her electronic equipment, Hunt came to the conclusion that also the mind is an energy field phenomenon, having its seat in the aura. It acts both inside and outside of us, as well as in bodily tissues. Before brainwaves were activated, the field already responded. Although the person experienced no conscious sensation, and even before increased activity in the brain. This auric field was also studied by Valerie Hunt and her team in a near-sound sterile room at her university, where sound is absorbed by baffles projected from the walls and ceiling. The room had no light or outside sound to provide electromagnetic energy. Immediately they felt strange sensory aberrations and lost all sense of time. They could not make any recordings. Their consciousness altered so rapidly that they were not able to operate instruments. Other experiments took place in a shielded room where the natural electromagnetic energy field of the air could be altered without changing the level of gravitational force or oxygen content. When the electrical aspect of the room was withdrawn, the auric fields became randomly disorganized, scattered, and incoherent. Sensory perception was so impaired that subject lost all awareness of their body location. Energy was no longer flowing, but rather jumping between people and their chakras or energy centers. They drew upon each other's energy field, which weakened all fields. Their body responded as though they were threatened. When the electrical field was increased again, the auric fields were restored to normalcy. On the other hand, when magnetism was decreased, gross incoordination occurred. Subjects could not balance their bodies anymore or touch their noses with a finger. By increasing the magnetic field beyond the normal state, they could easily stand on one foot or even balance at impossible angles. From over 600 hours of recordings under many circumstances, it was discovered that every person's individual energy field or aura was characterized by such measures as color, quantity of energy, areas where energy flowed freely while others were blocked. Every change occurred in the aura first before any of the other systems changed. Energy fields extended everywhere as an open system, free to evolve and grow, and they are sometimes in disequilibrium. This was once demonstrated when a TV crew from a national broadcasting station visited Valerie Hunt's laboratory for shooting a documentary. 9 technicians appeared with an array of equipment, and of course with their own individual energy fields or aura. An odor of alcohol was noticeable in their breath. They had apparently been entertained at a party the night before. The scientists were prepared to instrument the test person's energy field for direct online filming of the oscilloscope on computer displays. To their amazement, a glitch occurred in the equipment. No signal could be obtained. It was at first thought that the technical equipment of the TV crew had overloaded their own instruments. But strangely enough, the TV equipment was not the problem. Because when the TV crew was asked to leave the room, although leaving the equipment behind, normal energy field recordings were possible again within a few minutes. The problem were not incompatible instruments, but rather incompatible human energy fields. A sensitive subject and a contaminated crew, or even a field reaction from sensitive staff, which made direct recordings impossible. The problem could only be circumvented by using already recorded data for the documentary. As already mentioned, electronic data confirmed that a human energy field is unique. It not only transacts, but also makes choices. The conclusion of the scientists was that matter and energy, mind and spirit are not really different things, but only aspects of an expanded reality. Experiences of reflexes from material reality, like body or personality states, for example, are recorded in and recovered from the brain. Other impressions, such as experienced knowing, higher information, transcendental ideas, insight about ultimate sources of reality and creativity in its purest form, are properties of the higher mind, which seems to be outside the domain of material reality, as Hunt and her team were able to measure it. It is beyond material substances, yet interacts with them in an open system. The mind, with its vast complexity, can explore far beyond the closed circuit of the brain. By moving into an altered state of consciousness, the brain may not even be aware of it. This led to the hypothesis that the human energy field contains the highest level of the mind, which interrelates with the cosmosphere. Electrical stimulation did not activate what was considered the higher mind. There is no evidence that the higher levels of the mind are located in the brain. Grounded in a state of material reality, our energy field ranges from 350 to 600 cycles per second. An altered state of consciousness exhibits a range of up to 200,000 cycles per second. These upper ranges of vibrations also contain information of previous lifehoods, which can be experienced. The human energy field is organized by emotions, which first cause an agitation in the field and then in the body and awareness. If focused in the space-time domain, the concern is with body and self. If out of time, in a mystical state, the concern is with the soul. And Valerie Hunt quotes from Hindu philosophy, where it is stated that the inner search culminates in self-realization. No charismatic leader is needed anymore. The higher self contacts the perennial wisdom directly. To develop this higher plane of knowledge and the techniques to access it is our evolutionary work. In her laboratory, Valerie Hunt discovered that the auric vibrations in microvolt had the same frequencies as the human ear. When amplified, these vibrations become sounds, which can be heard. They coalesce within outside sounds, changing also in color, depending on the frequency, and become our personal symphony. Just what HBB told us already 140 years ago. Any vibrations that are seen or felt arrive at our nervous system via the human energy field. It constitutes a transaction between the world and a person. States of health and illness are reflected in the field. A healthy field shows all colors of the rainbow. During illness, a viral infection, for example, certain colors dominate. The discoveries of Valerie Hunt are now able to physically confirm with sophisticated computer technology what could only be found in metaphysical teachings of the perennial wisdom tradition, handed down from time immemorial by the adepts. But also Kirlian photography had a revival on a more sophisticated level, making the aura and its activities visible. In the 1990s, a Russian physicist called Dr. Konstantin Korotkov and his colleagues at the St. Petersburg State University of Informational Technologies invented a digital form of Kirlian photography called GDV, which stands for Gas Discharge Visualization Technique, incorporating the knowledge of the German Peter Mandl Institute for Esoteric Medicine in software programs to analyze the human aura. Esogetic is a compound word for esoteric and energetic, incorporating ancient wisdom and understanding of cosmic laws. The findings and interpretations are identical with Valerie Hunt's research. Disturbances and blockages in the energy flow of the human aura, which cause illness, can now be treated with a method called color puncture, where the acupuncture points concerned are not treated with needles anymore, but stimulated with a different spectrum of light frequencies or colors, producing astonishing results. The ancients were very much aware about the influence of sound in and on our auric field and the body. Indian classical compositions, for example, are based on raga, which means to color. It is an acoustic method of influencing or coloring the mind of the listener with an emotion. It is not a tune or melody, but a combination of different characteristics. There's a collection of fundamental notes of the raga and the vibrations of their pitch moving up and down the musical scale at certain vibrations have a distinct influence on our nervous system. The musical expressions by mixing sounds is as endless as mixing colors for a painting. Even if the theme of two paintings might look the same, the choice of colors gives them an underlying quality, which makes them distinct from each other. Although the Indian musical system is also based on the diatonic or sevenfold musical scale with its sub and semitones as mentioned by the Mahatma Kutumi, it is quite a bit different from the chromatic or 12-tone system of the musical scale which we use in the West. In the Secret Doctrine, we can read that the Vedas have a distinct dual meaning, one expressed by the literal sense of the word, the other indicated by the meter or swara, intonation, which are the life of the Vedas, and that the mysterious connection between light and swara is one of the most profound secrets. Swara is closely connected with Shruti, or revealed knowledge. In Indian music, it is also the interval between musical notes, which make us grasp the theme of the sounds we hear and the melody. Brian Godden is a professional musician who had studied both Indian and Western musical systems. And he says in an article, The Perfect Third Discovery, as distinct from our Western chromatic scale of 12 notes, there are 22 shrutis in Indian music, which can be discerned by the musical ear by thoroughly training dormant pathways within the brain, and that they resonate sympathetically in the DNA of our body cells. As we have all more or less heard, the DNA of our body is a self-replicating material in living organisms and the main constituent of chromosomes, carrying genetic information in form of genes. It is interesting to know that humans have 46 chromosomes in each cell. 2 of them are the male and female sex chromosomes. The other 42 of them are pairs of 22 autosomes. One set of autosomes is from our mother, the other one is from our father. They are combined into pairs and numbered by size. And it is said that these strings resonate with all things vibratory. It is probably no coincidence that the shrutis are also 22 in number, resonating sympathetically in the DNA within the cells of our bodies when listening to sounds or music. like the different solfeggio frequencies, an ancient six-tone scale used in sacred music like the Gregorian chants, are said to help balancing the energies of body, mind, and spirit. From all this information, it is obvious why our whole constitution, including the body, must be devoid of pollution, leading to distortions, if we want to become receptive of the higher vibrations of love for all life, and the wisdom about the evolutionary path of all forms of existence, and with it, true brotherhood. In other words, resonate with the Logos. Physical man is a musical instrument, and the ego the performing artist. The potentiality of perfect melody of sound is in the former, the instrument, and no skill of the latter can awaken a faultless harmony out of a broken or badly made instrument. This harmony depends on the fidelity of transmission by word or act to the objective plane of the unspoken divine thought in the very depths of man's subjective or inner nature. The co-disciples must be tuned by the guru as a string of a lute or veena, each different from the other, yet each emitting sounds in harmony with all. Collectively, they must form a keyboard, answering in all its parts to their slightest touch, the touch of the master. Thus their minds shall open for the harmonies of wisdom, to vibrate as knowledge through each and all. So shall wisdom be impressed forever on their hearts, and the harmony of the law shall never be broken. And according to H.P.B. in her collected writings, our soul are as if it were a music, of which our bodies are the instrument. Or to use another simile, physical man is a musical instrument, and the ego the performing artist. The music exists without the instrument, but it cannot make itself heard without a material intermediary. The immaterial can neither be conceived nor grasped. Hence, spirit cannot communicate. No ego differs from another ego in its primordial or original essence and nature. That which makes one mortal a great man and another a vulgar, silly person is, as said, the quality and makeup of the physical shell or casing, and the adequacy or inadequacy of brain and body to transmit and give expression to the light of the real inner man. And this aptness or inaptness is, in its turn, the result of karma. And again, the potentiality of perfect melody of sound is in the former, the instrument. And no skill of the latter can awaken a faultless harmony out of a broken or badly made instrument. This harmony depends on the fidelity of transmission by word or act to the objective plane of the unspoken divine thought in the very depths of man's subjective or inner nature. Physical man may, to follow our simile, be a priceless Stradivarius, or a cheap and cracked fiddle, or again a mediocrity between the two in the hands of the Paganini who ensouls him. I would like to close now with A Course in Miracles. It is a volume of written material arranged as a self-study course designed to bring the student into a consistent state of peace and happiness. The course was initially scribed and typed up during the years of 1965 to 1972 by two professors of medical psychology at Columbia University in New York, Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford. In chapter 21, we can read about a forgotten song, where it says, listen now and try to think if you remember what we'll speak of now. Listen, perhaps you catch a hint of an ancient state not quite forgotten, dim perhaps, and yet not altogether unfamiliar, like a song whose name is long forgotten and the circumstances in which you heard completely unremembered. Not the whole song has stayed with you, but just a little wisp of melody, attached not to a person or a place or anything particular. But you remember from just this little part how lovely was that song, how wonderful the setting where you heard it, and how you loved those who were there and listened with you. The notes are nothing, yet you have kept them with you, not for themselves, but as a soft reminder of what would make you weep if you remembered how dear it was to you. You could remember, yes, you are afraid, believing you would lose the world you learned since then, and yet you know that nothing in the world you learned is half as dear as this. Listen and see if you remember an ancient song you knew so long ago and held more dear than any melody you taught yourself to cherish. Beyond the body, beyond the sun and stars, past everything you see and yet somehow familiar, is an arc of golden light that stretches as you look into a great and shining circle. And all the circle fills with light before your eyes. The edges of the circle disappear, and what is in it is no longer contained at all. The light expands and covers everything, extending to infinity, forever shining, and with no break or limit anywhere. Within it, everything is joined in perfect continuity, nor is it possible to imagine that anything could be outside, for there is nowhere that this light is not. Peace be with you.